the President that Cyril Ramaphosa will officially open that meeting in Johannesburg this afternoon. The gathering, which is hosted by International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola, takes place at the Nasrec Expo Centre today and tomorrow under South Africa's G20 Presidency. The theme this year, as we've been saying, is solidarity, equality and sustainability. The international desk at the SABC is fanned out at that particular gathering. Let's bring in now the editor, Sophie, who joins us live. And of course, we're counting down to 2 o'clock. That's when the President is expected to speak. But it gives us an opportunity, Sophie, to really try to place the context under which this two-day meeting is taking place.
Well, thank you so much, Ayanda. We are here at Nasrec, as you are aware, that the G20 Foreign Affairs Ministerial Meeting is expected to get underway at around 2 this afternoon, where we expect the head of state of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, to open that meeting. Quite an at a time where there are lots of global challenges. But as we know that when this group was launched, the intention was to ensure that there's synergy amongst leaders of this group in relation to the economic challenges that were facing the world at that time. And that was an intervention. It started with the central bank governors, including the finance ministers. But later, we know that in the United States of America, a decision was taken, and the country hosted the first G20 summit for heads of state and government. And since then, leaders have converged every year to try and iron out and find a way and resolve some of the pressing challenges around the world. But I'm going to be in conversation with Advocate Advocate Jele, who is going to speak to us about the state of readiness and what South Africa wants to achieve. Advocate, thank you for your time. Quite an important gathering. When we look at the theme, particularly South Africa's focus, it looks like South Africa wants to see a just world system. What will be the President's main focus in terms of ensuring that the theme does resonate with all people who are here are on board in terms of what South Africa wants as a developing country?
Sophie, I think it is a commitment of all G20 countries, as has been reflected through the work that they have been engaging in over the past few years, to see a just world. This is not a South African focus. This is one that is shared and has consistently been accepted by all G20 members throughout the years, especially in the last few years. The geopolitical situation renders this particularly challenging. However, the end goal and the principles that we all embrace, we trust will bring us together to a conclusion that will reflect shared values. This is the year in which we are celebrating the 80th anniversary of the United Nations Charter, for example. It is an opportunity for us to keep it back of mind, to remind ourselves of the reasons why we have an international order, of the reason why we have rules that apply to all. I think the President is, at this very first Foreign Ministers Meeting, whilst work has already started in working groups, going to give the direction that builds on his speech during the launch of our presidency on the 1st of December last year, and speak to the need for us in solidarity to work as a group, both members of the G20 and our guest countries, as well as the important international organizations that join us in this endeavor, to see further steps being taken in each of the elements of the task forces and the national priorities identified to reach or move forward towards that just world.
Advocate, when you talk about a united group and the President trying to pull all member states together, when I spoke to the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, last year, he came to South Africa to see the President. There's huge interest in terms of the world body to ensure that this meeting is a success at a very critical time. The role of the UN at this gathering.
The United Nations is the center of international relations. It is the center of multilateral dialogue. The G20 is an element of a system that is centralized with the United Nations. When the President met UNSG Gutierrez in New York last year in September, we spoke about the value of the Pact for the Future that had been at that time adopted by a number of countries as also being an element in forming the kind of work that we're going to be doing, the goals that we're looking towards, which naturally then include the Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations is the center around which we gravitate, and it is one that has provided us both substantive support through its agencies as well as practical support. You'll be aware that Ms. Amina Mohamed is here as the deputy to Antonio Gutierrez, and therefore at this Foreign Ministers Meeting, the UN is represented at a high level. You will also be aware that a number of agencies of the United Nations participate as international organizations, but also provide support. They are experts in various fields, numerous fields directly relevant to the work that we are doing, whether it's those organizations that deal with employment, or UNESCO, for example, or UNCTAD. They are in a position to be able to help us feed the substance of the work we are doing. They assist us in many ways, and I do believe it is important for us to remember the importance of the United Nations as we as G20 members who are members of the United Nations meet.
Thank you so much, Advocate. That was Advocate Jele talking to us about this gathering. And as you know that this is the first for the African continent, South Africa being the only country within this group. But you'd recall that South Africa worked very hard to ensure that the African Union is part of this important group. We'll later on be speaking to the DG of the Department of International Relations. We will also weigh in on thorny issues around the world at this moment, the Middle East, Ukraine, and of course the relationship with the United States of America. Back to you in studio.
Sophie Mokoena is the SABC News International Desk Editor. Thanks very much indeed. More on that and our breaking news story for you throughout the course of the afternoon. Thanks as always for keeping up with us. On Point is coming up next.